Let's go to Colombo, speak to Bhavani Fonseca, who's a human rights lawyer in Sri Lanka. Bhavani, welcome to the program. How important a moment is this? And do you see any possible dangers during this transitional period?
Great moment in Sri Lanka because the protesters over the months demanded for the resignation of Gotabaya Rajapaksa, and he has finally resigned. And this is just quite unprecedented. We have not had this kind of impact through protests. So it's very, very important. And now we have an acting president who has taken office, and Parliament next week will decide as to who will be the next president who serves the remainder of the time period. Now, that said, while things are very, very, important and think what's been happening, there's also a issue of political stability and economic crisis in Sri Lanka. So it's extremely important that we follow the democratic processes and that we ensure that the next leader is able to take on this mammoth task. There's a lot of things that need to be done in Sri Lanka.
In terms of the possible dangers, my thinking is behind the longevity of the Rajapaksa family holding the political reins of Sri Lanka. Since 2005, Mahinda Rajapaksa, the brother, having become president, and now Gotabaya, his brother, being the leader, and Mahinda being the prime minister. So, and so many of the other brothers being ministers. In terms of their influence on the country and those who may be loyal to them, whether those people may be politicians or business leaders, other major decision makers, is that a possible danger because the transitional period would mean that the Rajapaksa legacy is being dismantled?
Well, just because one Rajapaksa has resigned, that's the president, doesn't mean they have left politics. They're very much involved in politics in Sri Lanka and will wield considerable influence. Their party holds the majority of seats in Parliament, and Parliament is what's going to decide next week who the president is. So there is a lot of things at stake, and the Rajapaksa family, while they have had a massive setback with this resignation, but also in recent times, the other resignations, they are still a force that need to be reckoned with. So it's very interesting times. This is just kind of very new what's happening, and we'll have to see what happens the next couple of days. But at least the first step has started with the resignation of this all-powerful president, and hopefully things stay in course and the democratic process follows through.
Yes, of course, that is the proper democratic process for Sri Lanka, that given the situation the country is in, their parliament will be electing or selecting, however you want to put it, the next president. But in your mind, is there any possibility of that next leader's legitimacy being questioned? Because it's not the normal way that Sri Lankans elect their president. It's the parliamentarians doing it for the people.
Definitely, there are lots of questions in terms of the legitimacy of many political leaders at the present moment. What the protests have done is really jolted the existing culture and the leadership. And that will continue to be there in terms of questioning and raising questions of accountability and legitimacy. So there are questions in terms of who is able to come in, who is able to take control and take the country forward. And there are also concerns that if particular individuals who are extremely unpopular are elected, the whole issue of legitimacy comes in. But again, we need to let Parliament take its course, because this is provided in the Constitution. This is not just any election. This is an election when there is a vacancy for the office of the presidency. So it's different to a general election. But one of the things that's also been talked about is going in for a general election when the situation is conducive to have elections. So maybe in a couple of months, one has elections where people decide and the mandate is from the people. But for the interim, this is what is provided in the Constitution, and this should be adhered to in terms of stability. We cannot have a situation where the constitution is also undermined.
Bhavani, are you indicating that you think there might be an early general election? Because if it's in a few months, that would be before the end of Gotabaya Rajapaksa's term, which would be completed by whoever is selected by Parliament to replace him.
There is discussions about the holding of elections. I mean, at the moment, Sri Lanka cannot hold election purely because of the economic crisis. I mean, people have basic necessities that need to be met. There needs to be political stability before any election is done. But the present elected representatives have also lost the confidence of the people. Questions of legitimacy and credibility are raised with many politicians. So in such a context, one has to look to an election. One has to look to getting a fresh mandate from the people. But all of this needs to happen at the correct time, not right now. The most immediate is to ensure there is political stability and ensuring steps are taken to address the economic dimension. So those are the most urgent right now.
Yeah, absolutely. People want help and they want help now. Bhavani, thank you so much indeed for your time. Bhavani Fonseca in Colombo.